Hello everyone, Mary Rose here at Stitch Bliss Corner. I'd like to say a special thank you to all those who comment on my videos. It's always interesting to hear what you have to say, and I very much enjoy reading those. Now, I have a few things today. I'd like to say a few words about Ada and DMC. I have a new start that I wasn't expecting, and just a few words about Martina Rosenberg's passing. I've noticed in the Flosstube community there's been a great deal of grief and upset about her passing, and it is very sad. But she leaves behind a great legacy, and that's something that is very special for someone to be able to do that, to live a life and leave something behind that people will remember you for. And I can remember watching a program once where someone said, "How did you spend your dash?" And the person said, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, when you die and you have a tombstone there, you have your date when you were born, and then a dash, and the date that you die. And how do you spend your dash? What do you do in your life that will show that you made a mark?" And I think that's something for everyone to ponder on, how you're spending your dash. Whether you're making it count or whether you're letting it just drift along. But for a lot of stitchers, we're spending our dash very well, because we're leaving behind plenty of evidence that we were here in our stitching. And Martina was part of that. She's, and still is, very much part of the legacy of the stitches, of those who stitch her creations. And she was very keen on emphasizing a blank sheet to work on. She liked a nice clean sheet of white fabric. And that's not as to say that those who use dyed fabrics for chatelaines, that there's anything untoward about that. That wouldn't be, I'm sure, how Martina would have seen it. I think she first and foremost wanted people to create the work that they wanted to show, that they were happy with, and that gave them joy. But I do think it's interesting that she very much did like a clean sheet to work with for when you're putting your stitches down. Well, you know, rest in peace, Martina, and your legacy will be ongoing, that's for sure. Right, so now I'm going to go on to the subject of Ada fabric, because for some reason it gets a bit of a bad rap. I don't know why, because Ada is the commando of the fabric world. I mean, you can pretty much do anything to it and it'll still, you know, jump up and say, "More please," you know. So I'm a bit of a fan of Ada. I mean, I'm doing the Scout on Ada, and the coverage is excellent. So you never have a problem. He's 18 count, and I've never had a problem with coverage in Scout. So I'd be happy to use 18 count, and I'll probably use that when I get to Dragons of Sumatra, providing, of course, it doesn't mean that it's massive. I mean, I haven't had a proper look at it yet, but I'm more than happy to use it on that. And then we come to the subject of threads. And, yeah, you know, I mean, I want to know why it's a big bonus to have a limited edition thread colour. You know, that would send me to anxiety plus, I think, because I like to have plenty of the thread that I'm using, even if I don't think I'll be using that much of it. But the idea of a limited edition thread, I sort of think, well, you know, unless you're going to do it right there and then, and you think, well, I've got my limited edition thread and I'm going to use it right now, so that, you know, not put the thing I'm stitching away for months and then get it out and, oh, where's my limited edition thread now? You know, how am I going to get that? I mean, I don't really understand the whole concept of a limited edition thread. I mean, I can understand the concept of a limited edition coin or a stamp or something like that. I can get my head round. But limited edition threads, I just don't understand them. And that brings me to DMC. Now, I don't know, I think that people seem to think that DMC, you know, if you stitch with that, you're not, what's the word? Well, maybe you're not adventurous enough or something, but I think that DMC threads are great. The only complaint I've heard from flossers, or Flosstubers, about DMC thread is the black, that the black doesn't cover as well as Anchor does. But I've heard quite a few complaints about all these different weird and wonderful threads that you can get, you know, the special ones. And I'm not saying for 1 minute that people shouldn't use special threads, you know, dine out on them. That's fine by me. But at the same time, there's almost this undertone that DMC isn't quite up to the mark. You know, if you're using DMC, you're not quite there yet on the creativity scale. But yeah, I think you should use whatever thread you're happy with. And up to this moment, DMC has always served me very well. So I'm more than happy with it, and I'm happy with Ada. And that will bring me to another fabric that I'm going to mention shortly. You know, it reminded me a bit of the Animal Farm, you know. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Well, I think it's a little bit like that with threads, but I think we shouldn't get too hung up on them. Anyway, whatever. Now, the other thing I was going to say, I think that's where I'm going into my new start. Now, last time I did a video, I mentioned Sir Isaac Newton. Well, actually, someone called him Sir Isaac Newton in the comments, so I'm assuming that is correct. So anyway, Isaac Newton and the little story about him and creation and all that sort of thing. And that reminded me of a poem that I used to love at school, and I still do love it. And a lot of people are probably quite familiar with this poem by William Blake, called Tyger, Tyger. Tyger with a Y. Tyger, Tyger. And that made me think about how I would like to stitch something along those lines, that particular poem. And it's interesting because I think I did say something about 2018 being the year of the poems, and maybe it is going to go that way. So anyway, I have a little bit here about, I think I'll read you the poem first. Should I do that or? Look, there's a little bit about William Blake that wrote it, but not a lot. Just to give you a bit of an idea about him, and then I think I might read the poem because it'll probably mean more to you then. I'll just show you a picture of him. There he is, with his pencil in hand. He was an artist, a poet, and an illustrator. He illustrated books. He was an engraver as well, so he was quite a talented fellow. And there is a picture here. Shall I just find that? Of an engraving of his poem. And I think that he is the one that did the illustration there. And there's his, from a book that he wrote. So I'll just tell you a little bit about him, and then, as I say, I'll just go on to the poem. He was born in 1757 and he died in 1827. English poet, painter and printmaker. His contemporaries saw him as an eccentric. He was reverent of the Bible but did not support organised religion. The Bible was an early and profound influence on him throughout his life. He left school at 10 years old after learning to read and write. His parents enrolled him in a drawing school because they realised he was a headstrong person. Apparently his contemporaries thought he was a bit crazy. He was an apprentice to an engraver for 7 years, and at 21 he became a professional engraver. He used to copy images from Gothic churches, and in Westminster Abbey he experienced visions of Christ and his apostles. Blake became a student at the Royal Academy, and at times he used to argue the toss with different people there as well. Now, he was just getting over a refused marriage proposal. I thought this was quite interesting. And he told a girl called Catherine Boucher all about it. He then asked Catherine if she pitied him, and she said yes, she did. And he declared, "Then I love you." And he married her. And they stayed together all his life. On the day of his death, he turned to his wife, who was in tears at his bedside. He said, "Stay, Kate, keep just as you are, and I will draw your portrait." He completed his portrait, laid down his tools, and began to sing hymns and verses. He promised he would be with her always, and he was having visions of heaven as he died. So he sounds like quite an interesting man. Once again, these people are so interesting. Now here's the poem. The Tyger. Tyger, Tyger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dead grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tyger, Tyger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? And of course that's read on the internet. You can find lots of versions of people reading that remarkable poem. And there are a few points about the poem that I've taken off the internet and also an observation of mine. The notion of the Creator fashioning the tiger out of pure fire, as if he had reached his hand into the fire and moulded the creature from it, echoed by the flame-like appearance of the tiger's stripes. And the third and fourth stanzas, Blake uses the metaphor between God and a blacksmith, as if God, just like a blacksmith, at his forge creates from base metals, so God created a living, ferocious tiger. Some have said that the tiger symbolises the Old Testament God, Yahweh, who is seen as vengeful and punitive, and the lamb as a reference to the New Testament of a meek and forgiving God. Then, let's have a look here. Blake refers to the divine creation of the natural world. He considers the maker of the tiger to make a ferocious beast capable of great destruction at one point, and then an innocent and gentle lamb. The reference to the lamb in the penultimate stanza reminds the reader that a tiger and a lamb have been created by the same God, and the poet leaves us to awe at the complexity of creation and the magnitude of God's power and the inscrutability of divine will. It is a sophisticated acknowledgement of what is unexplainable in the universe, presenting evil as the prime example of something that cannot be denied and cannot easily be explained. And Blake's philosophy centered on the contrary nature of things. He believed that to achieve truth, you had to see the contrast between innocence and experience. Experience is not the face of evil, but rather another facet of that which created us, according to Kazin. Rather than believing in war between good and evil, heaven and hell, Blake thought each man must first see and then resolve the contraries of existence and life. In the Tyger, he presents a poem of triumphant human awareness and a hymn to pure being. And I was thinking that perhaps the tiger is a metaphor for the adult's view of life, good and evil, and the lamb being more the child's view of life, of basically the world being good. But anyway, so that was part of what I found out when I had a look, because I was just looking to see a little bit more about the poem, and then that a few bits and pieces. So I thought, well, I'll put those in, and it's up to you what you make of it all. So anyway, the fabric that I chose, I'm just going to pop the aircon on because it's a bit humid. I know in America you're all shivering, but here it's like being in a steam bath. It's just insane. Anyway, so I have got, when I say I chose this fabric, it's not strictly correct, because I got this Lugana 25 count, and I've had that for a long, long time, and it was black, and I wanted to put my tiger on black. So I got the Lugana out. Now, this was the little tiger that I want to do. And as you can see, he's fairly plain, he's not too difficult to do. But I just like him. And this, you see it says Taronga Zoo there. Well, this is how old this fabric is, because it was when my daughter was in high school and they went down to Sydney to Taronga Park Zoo, and she brought this back for me, which I thought was very sweet. Anyway, the fabric. Now, I did a little test out, because I found that when I was doing just the 2/2, which was what I was doing. This is, what is it, 25? Yeah, 25 count. That one there, actually that coverage doesn't look too bad, but it's not great coverage. That's 2/2 there, and yes, that's right, 2/2 there, and it looked, you can still see the black in between. Oh, you can see there the black in between. So then I thought, well, I'll try 3 threads to see how that will go, and that's the 3 threads there. And I mean, that's a bit better, but there's still a little bit there, black in between. So then I went to this method, which is what I used on the Harlequin's shoes when I did my Harlequin, because I wasn't happy with the coverage. And that is where I do the cross and then I do a plus over the top of it. And I thought that coverage is much better. Now I do have, I took a picture of it with my iPad, so that I might be able to magnify it up for you. Right there. That's the 2/2. Then that's the 3/2, and you can see there are gaps there. And that's the one where I've done the cross and the plus over the top of it. And I can show you that stitch if you want to see it. But that coverage is much better. Now, I did also try, just for the heck of it, down there, you can see it's obvious there how poorly it covers the 2/2 there with the white. But mind you, that's just a single thread, that's why, because what I was wanting to do, I did the single thread 1/2 there of the white to see what the orange would look like over the top of a white base, just to see if it would look more orange than that with the white behind it. But I think the difference is negligible actually. So that was just a little test thing there. And this over here I just did for people who are thinking of doing, say, a snow background, snow over a black background, and wanted to get good coverage. Probably this method that I use would be a good coverage, because it does block out a lot of the background. So I'll just show you that now. I can find my piece of fabric. Oh, as usual, something goes on the floor. Now this here, this is 18 count Ada, and there's the coverage there. I mean, that's pretty good for just 2/2, and that is straight. That's not using the plus over the top of the cross. That's just straight, just 1x. So that's pretty good coverage in my book. So I've got my huge needle here so that I can do a big version for you to just see what I'm talking about. Okay. So what I'm doing, I'll just do the normal cross, but I'll do it bigger because it's just a demonstration. This lighting is terrible in here at the moment. now you just have to use, well, no, you don't have to do anything, just I was going to say you'll just have to use your imagination, and I thought, well, no you don't, because that's unfair to expect you to do that. I'll have to put my other glasses on, I think, because these are not so good for close-up work. Then again, if I can't find my other glasses, I'll have to, oh, here we go. It's just that these don't slide down my nose and these do, so. All right, let's start again, sorry. Right. Well, that's better. Okay, so I'll just get this X going. I was going to do it bigger, but it's probably better like that. Right, there's the cross. There's the cross there. Okay, so you do your ordinary cross, and then when you've done that, you bring the needle up in between and just go across. Basically, you're just putting a plus over the top of the X, that's all you're doing. So there's I just do the cross over there, the plus like a dash over the top, and then between the stitch at the bottom of the X, I should have done this on white so you could see it better, but anyway, and that gives you a real coverage there. Now some people will think, well, there's a lot more thread that you use that way, which is true, but then if you're reduced to having to do 3 threads instead of 2, well, just doing that extra little plus over the top of an X, I don't think it's too big a price to pay. The other thing I did try too was to do the little plus and then do the X over the top of that, but then it looked a bit too much like a little pillow. So I thought, well, no, I think this is probably better, because it does give you an X shape when you do a plus over the top of the original X. So it's just a suggestion. If you're having trouble with coverage, if you're going to use this sort of material, Lagana, and you're having a little bit of trouble getting coverage with your stitches, that is one way to deal with it. And I have started my little Tyger, and you can see there, and that's doing the stitching that I've just shown you, because I just wasn't happy with the coverage, because on black, whatever threads you're putting on the black, I think it does tend to leach away some of the vibrancy of the colour. So when I've finished him, I may well just do get a really bright orange and put a few highlights on there, just to emphasize the fact that, you know, he is burning bright. Otherwise, because I'm going to put the poem. See, I should have said this in the first place, but one of the reasons why I'm doing it on the Lagana and not Ada is because I want to put some, I was going to just put Tyger, Tyger burning bright in the forests of the night, but I think I may do the whole poem. And to do that, I do like to have these smaller threads because I'm not sure of what style of text that I'm going to put there. I mean, I may well not need it, But if, for example, I decided that I was crazy enough to try and do it in a more free-flowing copper plate style, I would have a good surface for that, because Ada does have its limitations when it comes to words. I think, yes, there can be a problem. And I think also with, if you're doing skin, Ada's a problem if you want to do a fine features, which I do like to do. And Marilyn Levitt Imblum had a very good suggestion for that. She said if you use hardanger, it's very good for the actual general stitching, 2/2. But for the facial features, because hardanger does divide up nicely into the 4 squares, if you look carefully at hardanger, you know what I mean. That was great for the skin feature. If you wanted to do the tiny squares instead of the 2/2, you wanted to do 1/1. She suggested hardanger, which is a very good suggestion. Now, I'm not going to show you Scout this time because I still haven't got to that horse's head. I have noticed that I'm getting close to the nose. So once I get the bottom of the nose done, that'll go on up to the rest of his head. So next time you see him, I am fervently hoping that he will actually have a very nice head on those magnificent shoulders of his. And so that isn't too far away now, because Tyger is certainly going to get a bit of a look in, but not a great deal until Scout is done. So anyway, now I think I'm heading down one of those waffling roads, which I'm trying to avoid. So, yes, so that's for next time, most likely. The horse's head will be done. So I may well show that. And then when you've seen that, you'll see him again once I've done all the background, which shouldn't take that long, because looking at him, there's not as much sky as there was prairie. So that's a good thing for me. But it's very interesting, I've noticed too, because when I was stitching him, I was thinking, this is a massive prairie I've got going on here. Maybe I could make it a little bit less. But then I realised that every part of what you're stitching is important to the whole. So really, even if you're doing something that you're thinking, oh, this is featureless, I'm just stitching confetti here, it does make a huge difference to the whole. Every evening when I finish stitching, I go round to Harlequin and hold it up and say, and he'll look at it and say, oh yes, that's coming along now, or yes, you can see the depth is coming in a bit more. So no stitch is wasted on particularly a big picture. And I had been telling myself that this was the first and last big full coverage I was going to be doing, because I didn't realise when I started him quite the magnitude he got to be. But having said that, I've seen a couple of charts that are coming that probably, because I did say to my husband, oh, this one probably isn't as big, and he said it's slightly bigger. Anyway, we shall worry about that when it turns up. Now, next time, I can't promise Elizabeth yet, because I basically have to wait till she's ready. So I might have her ready, and as soon as Elizabeth I is ready, then she will be making an appearance, I can assure you. Sometimes I just wake up in the morning and, well, I think that's a lot of my videos are like that. I don't really know when I'm going to be doing one, and then somehow or other it's on that morning. So that's just the way I roll, I guess. Well, so until next time, happy stitching to you all. And I'll put a link below for some of the readings of the Tyger, or if I remember, but I really don't think it's necessary actually, because you can easily put that on and it'll all these different people read versions the way they put the Tyger, not versions of it, but you know, their particular style of reading it is what I should be saying. So thank you very much for your company, and I shall see you again next time at Stitch Bliss Corner. Bye for now.